In the late Cretaceous world, absolutely dominated by speed and power, the surface of the Earth was enduring its most brutal survival race in history. From the moment of birth, every single living being was etched with the ironclad rule of full speed running, full speed tearing, and full speed escaping. Yet, just as all the invincible primordial overlords fell into an inescapable evolutionary frenzy, a certain creature lived like an elegant outsider. Tonight, beside the gently flickering hearth, let us journey into its true life through this story that requires no effort to remember. Its name was Segnosaurus. In the starry compendium of the ancient world, it lived like a mysterious monk operating under a slow-motion lens. While the predators around it charged frantically through the heavy rain for a few inches of territory, emitting violent roars that made the entire forest tremble, the Segnosaurus stood in the deep twilight, moving its heavy frame to an exceptionally sluggish, almost sorrowful rhythm. It took several seconds just to lift a wide, stout foot, pausing briefly in mid-air before returning it to the ground with an almost tender grace. Devoid of panic or haste, all the rising tides, falling crests, and life-or-death struggles of the outside world were nothing more than a negligible breeze in its massive, gentle eyes. It was like an hourglass of time, using ultimate slowness to counter the clamor of an entire era, using a lifetime of restraint to dissolve the tragic destiny of herbivorous behemoths. Tonight, we too shall follow its regular, heavy, and deeply healing ancient steps, peeling away the urban tensions and anxieties of the day layer by layer, and sink into that hidden, eternal night belonging exclusively to the Segnosaurus, where nobody is in a rush. In the very beginning, fate did not grant the Segnosaurus any weapon to flaunt. Instead, it bound its life with a tight-fitting curse named sluggishness. Although it belonged to the theropod clade, a ferocious lineage that birthed countless apex assassins, it chose a completely opposite path at the crossroads of evolution. Its skeletal structure was exceptionally heavy, its wide pelvis and short, thick hind limbs predestined that it could never lift off into a run, let alone perform agile dodges when ambushed. This meant that in the late Cretaceous, where the law of the jungle reached its zenith, it was exposed to countless lethal teeth and claws from the moment it was born. Yet, it was precisely this seemingly irremediable innate weakness that became the first fracture propelling its destiny to shift, forcing it to seek an alternative philosophy of survival. When it was still very young, it had witnessed with its own eyes countless peers who prided themselves on agility, tossing and turning frantically just to seize more sunshine and food within their limited time. Those athletic figures sprinted at full speed through the jungle, and though they won a fleeting moment of attention, they exhausted the splendor of their lives in an incredibly short time, collapsing into ruins. The Segnosaurus lay quietly in the depths of the dense fern thickets, watching those clamorous lives rise and extinguish like fireworks, as a profound stillness gradually welled up within its heart. It understood that in this cruel world, if one raced against the wind, one would only be ruthlessly torn apart by it, turning into the dust of the era. But if it could transform into a rock, a tree, or even time itself, then those violent forces would no longer be able to harm it in the slightest. Thus, it began to intentionally slow its already sluggish pace, stretching each breath and each turn of its head to the absolute limit that life could bear. It surrendered all speed-based reconciliation with the world, channeling all its strength instead into every exceptionally steady, exceptionally certain footfall. This ultimate slowness was not a compromise with fate, but a supreme, resolute form of life restraint born from a clear awareness of its own limitations. As the first ray of mature twilight belonging to its adulthood blanketed its coarse, grayish-green skin, it had thoroughly become the loneliest and most peaceful traveler upon this land. Once the Segnosaurus had completely established its slow-paced manner of survival, the very first test it faced was how to stay alive in this hostile jungle. The primordial jungle of the late Cretaceous was a colossal labyrinth woven of power and desire, with the chains of the jungle law tightly fastened around the neck of every living being. As a herbivorous dinosaur without sharp fangs or an apex frame, every stroll the Segnosaurus took was actually a step along the precipice separating life and death. Yet, it possessed a unique wisdom, a strategy of absolute power evasion that took non-contention to its zenith, allowing it to dissolve into the background amidst the clamor. Every morning, as the sunshine just pierced through the tall redwood canopy, the herbivores on the surface began to mass into colossal herds, marching toward the oases with grand momentum. They fought violently over the most succulent leaves, trampling the mud and emitting piercing cries, while simultaneously drawing countless greedy predators to their side. The Segnosaurus, however, never disdained to join such frenzied gatherings. It always wandered solitarily and unhurriedly along the edges of the empty forest after the herds had departed. It was never in a rush to reach the highest shoots, nor did it compete with others for the low pastures. It simply set its sights on an exceptionally ordinary gymnosperm growing by the cliff. Its progress toward it was as slow as a creeping iceberg. Moving from the forest shade into the sunshine required an entire hour. If a patrolling predator happened to pass by during this process, the Segnosaurus would directly freeze in place, transforming into a statue devoid of any vital aura. It lowered its long neck slightly, folding its two massive front claws submissively against its chest, its dark green skin textures mirroring the surrounding rocks perfectly in the shadows. The hunters, accustomed to chasing running objects, possessed retinas incapable of capturing this ultimate stillness, or rather, a life moving at a micrometer scale velocity. The predators swept past it with ferocious auras, kicking up gusts of scorching wind, yet they never truly cast their gaze upon this ancient stone. This absolute restraint and composure in the face of danger was its strongest armor, allowing it to maintain a transcendent independence amidst the intricate dynamics of the jungle. While those invincible predators roared anxiously because they could find no fleeing prey, the Segnosaurus was already by the cliff, unhurriedly enjoying its lunch. Each chew was accompanied by the aroma of primordial plant sap, ground exceptionally slowly between its teeth, transforming into the pure warmth that fueled its long life. Through this seemingly cowardly yet exquisitely profound survival logic, it carved out an absolutely secure paradise for itself amidst the most cutthroat of the Cretaceous. As time drifted onward, the climate of the late Cretaceous began to develop an unsettling, anomalous tension. Drought and scorching heat gradually blanketed the entire eastern continent. Once abundant rivers began to dry up, and vast stretches of fern forests withered under the blistering sun, turning into charred debris that shattered at the slightest touch. The extreme compression of living space completely dismantled the fragile peace, plunging all living beings on the surface into a state of near-insane attrition and panic. Many herbivores accustomed to traveling in herds began large-scale migrations in search of water, collapsing in droves during the arduous journey, turning into trails of dry bones along the way. Meanwhile, the carnivores grew even more hysterical due to the scarcity of food, locked in ceaseless, day-and-night slaughter and plunder on the barrens, even resorting to cannibalism. Within this hellish bottleneck of an era, the seemingly comical slowness of the Segnosaurus quietly revealed a staggering structural advantage. Because its movements always maintained an exceptionally low metabolic state, its demand for water and energy was only a fraction of that of its violently running peers. While others needed to trek dozens of miles daily to find fresh water, the Segnosaurus only needed to lie within a deep shadow cast by ancient crags, quietly awaiting the arrival of the night. It curled its body into the pebble piles warmed by the daytime sun, utilizing exceptionally long, deep, low-frequency respirations to minimize the loss of internal moisture. Its heartbeat was as slow as counting the hourglass of centuries, each thud heavy and certain, as if injecting a dose of sedative into this anxious land. When night fully draped the world and the temperature on the barrens dropped slightly, it finally opened its massive eyes slowly, stepping toward hidden streams with an exceptionally regular pace. That once wide river now retained only a slender creek shimmering with silver light under the moon, but for the Segnosaurus, this was entirely enough. It submerged its long snout into the chilly stream, sucking exceptionally slowly, each droplet tracing a gentle path deep within its throat. The moonlight spilled over its dust-covered back, plating its grayish-green scales with a faint silver rim, making it resemble an ancient sage bridging the primordial dawn. It contested not a single oasis war, nor did it feel an ounce of anxiety for the collapse of the era. It simply enjoyed the continuation of life solitarily within its own slow cadence. Those giant beasts that had exhausted their last shred of strength in the frenzy of the day eventually closed their eyes in despair amidst thirst, turning into footnotes of time. Yet, the Segnosaurus, in the deep of every chilly night, still trod its silent path with those ancient steps governed by a slow-motion lens, walking toward an even deeper twilight. In the late Cretaceous midnight when the Segnosaurus entered the twilight of its life, the gentlest and most fated scene for this primeval behemoth truly and quietly arrived. By then, its skin had grown to resemble cracked tree bark under the weathering of eons, and its stout joints emitted a dull hum with every nudge it took. Yet, its gaze was clearer and deeper than ever before, filled with the silent memories of tens of thousands of nights spent upon this land. It was a cold, starry night. The sky was completely devoid of clouds, and the brilliant Milky Way hung suspended in the void like a river of life paved with crushed gold. The Segnosaurus knew that its ultimate limit was approaching, an irreversible law of nature and a gentle summation that Mother Earth whispers at the end of every life's journey. It harbored no terror, nor any sorrow of wanting to struggle. It simply walked unhurriedly toward the lake it knew best, just like its countless strolls in the past. That lake was closely enveloped by tall Alsophila trees and ancient rocks. Its surface was so tranquil that not a single ripple disturbed it, perfectly duplicating the entire starry sky upon the water. Treading upon the soft moss wafting a faint scent of earth, the Segnosaurus moved toward the shallow shoals in the center of the lake, pausing with every single step, each movement brimming with a sacred sense of ritual. It lifted its right foot, suspending it in midair for a full 5 seconds, allowing the night breeze to brush past the delicate scales between its toes, before entering the water steadily and soundlessly. The water submerged its heavy ankles, whisking away all the aches and exhaustion accumulated over a lifetime, granting it a warm envelopment akin to returning to a mother's womb. It slowly bowed its long neck, suspending its head just above the water's surface, gazing at its own slender, weathered reflection mirrored in the stream. It drew a deep breath and exhaled it exceptionally long and slow, releasing a dense plume of white mist across the chilly lake, the fog shimmering with a hazy light under the moon. Then, with the gentlest and slowest motion of its entire life, it folded its 2 massive front claws together upon a giant, moss-covered boulder in the center of the lake. Resting its heavy chin securely upon the tips of its claws, its entire body achieved a flawless equilibrium between the warm water and the chilly night breeze, resembling an eternally frozen stone sculpture. Its eyes began to close inch by inch, each flicker of its lashes like witnessing a protracted century, until those gentle eyes finally dissolved completely into the dark. Its heartbeat began to decelerate, from once every 2 seconds, to once every 5 seconds, to a dull tremor separated by a full minute, until it finally merged seamlessly into the pulse of the earth. It left not a single agonizing wail upon the surface, nor did it startle a single sleeping bird in the woods. It departed so quietly, so restrainedly, so elegantly. The night mist gathered once more over the lake, wrapping and concealing this rock born of a giant beast, as if it had never left, and as if it had always been here. Today, that Cretaceous continent which once drove countless primordial behemoths into frenzy and destruction has long since turned into deep soil through the vicissitudes of time. Those predatory overlords that once sprinted at full speed under the sun, invincible in their power, have ultimately become cold, cracked, shattered frames inside museums. Yet, when we reopen the memory of the Segnosaurus on this quiet night, we can still feel that deepest power of serenity traveling across hundreds of millions of years of time and space. That outlier, who required several seconds just to lift a foot and was misconstrued as a weakling in the torrent of its era, ultimately wrote the longest epic through its slowness. It uses the story of its life to gently tell us that in this volatile world always hurrying you to run at full speed, always leaving you anxious and tense, slowing down is actually a deeper, more decisive life wisdom and self-protection. The night wind has completely subsided now, all the clamor, all the disputes, and all the rushing of the outside world have dissolved cleanly into this story that requires no effort to remember. Within this warm blanket belonging exclusively to you, there is no longer anything that requires you to grit your teeth and endure, nor is there any unknown tomorrow demanding you to sprint at full speed. Just mimic that clever Segnosaurus, drawing your breath exceptionally long and slow, letting every exhausted joint relax completely within the soft bedding. The ancient moonlight has pierced through the dust of eons, spilling a sheet of the gentlest silver white at the edge of your dreams, quietly guarding the peace deep within your heart. Listening to the low narration by your ear, and feeling that sleepiness deep within your brain growing heavier and more intense, let your consciousness gently sink alongside the lake-like silence. Sleep now, confidently surrender all the burdens of the day to this all-embracing night, and peacefully drift into the deepest dreamscape under the slow-motion lens of time. Good night, distant and gentle ancient woods, good night, to every kind living being reclaiming its soul in the slow cadence of life.